because it's just so excessively used, becomes a thought-stopping cliche, because you take for granted that you know what it means. Now, normative. Perfectly useful, effective, great term, applied to concepts, abstract concepts, but they use it a lot regarding people and behavior. Anybody that's studied with this group for any period of time knows that non-normative means sin, and it's excessively used. And that photo, actually, it's difficult to see, and you can access it on that blog that it's listed on. This is somebody's getaway vehicle after their wedding, and instead of writing just married on there, they wrote welcome to normativity as an example of, so as if being unmarried is non-normative. I guess, you know, the Apostle Paul and all those other guys. I don't know. Got me. I believe these, looking at the basic beliefs, and I believe that they are Gnostic in the sense that they aren't obvious through even an informed reading of Scripture, but we need people to go up into heaven and bring them down to us. And by attaining their special teachings and their moral imperatives, we can have this higher level of Christian living. So in that sense, I believe it's very Gnostic. I believe that they are arguing for an uber Adam or a super Adam, and that by engaging in a participation in sanctification in some sense. Certainly, we are saved, but sanctification requires participation on behalf, particularly the man. And I believe that they're arguing a utopian-oriented working back to Eden, because they are preoccupied with Adam and Adamic symbolism, and they actually redefine Eve. We've already mentioned the teachings of the Trinity and the doctrine of subordinationism. And for those people who actually admit and are demonstrate candor regarding their Trinitarian beliefs, they actually conform to the doctrine of subordinationism. And we see a lot of this in the Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood, and Federal Vision, and Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Some of the deans of theology actually have published books that are referenced.
So, I happen to know a couple of those names, and I'm trying to figure out what you mean by putting them there. Grudem and Bruce Ware.
Wayne Grudem argues that there is a hierarchy within the Trinity, and they appeal to the doctrine of subordinationism to support their gender argument.
In other words, these guys have a theological understanding of subordination that is within the biblical limits, and these guys take that and move beyond them.
Yes.
Yeah, repeat that for the tape.
Oh, okay. They, based on the understanding of the Trinity, some of these gentlemen have expanded upon some of the concepts that are actually, Giles talks about that a great deal, through the different change in language. Turretin, who succeeded Calvin, wrote a systematic theology used in the mid-1900s, and he actually introduced the concept of the term subordination. But he said Christ was subordinate in modality, and from there on, there was just kind of this unfolding of doctrine that strayed from the sound Orthodox Trinitarian view. And it's kind of convenient because they use it for the gender debate. And it was convenient for slavery, too, and very often referred to in the 1900s, or the 1800s, excuse me. All right, what are they saying? Women are relegated to a hierarchical role of submitted sonship. God the Father in Trinity rules and reigns over the eternally subordinated Son. Therefore, man in marriage rules and reigns over his wife. Therefore, man in marriage is like unto God the Father in the Trinity, and woman is like unto Christ. So, women are to be like Christ in terms of hierarchy and in terms of submission. And man is more like unto God the Father. Kevin Giles says that the connection between gender and the subordination doctrine didn't come about until the 70s as a reaction to feminism. And one of the first books was published in 77 but it was most commonly popularized through Wayne Grudem's systematic theology in 1994. Next basic belief, the gospel is patriocentric, and this is based on the teachings of Russell Moore with the Council of Biblical Manhood and Womanhood and the Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. He says that any criticism of patriarchy and their concept of it is tantamount to open theism because it is viewed as an indirect challenging of God the Father and his lordship over all creation. Gender becomes a matter of biblical authority, and for the people that perceive this and make this presupposition, it's very difficult to get them to look at each aspect separately. Now, recall Palmer and the building block of the natural religion of family. Philip Lancaster says in Family Man, Family Leader, to be clear, we do not think that patriarchy is the central theme of the Bible, but then he argues that all human construct is like an archway, human effort towards spreading the gospel. And without the keystone of patriarchy holding the archway and balancing those stones together, all our efforts fall apart. So he actually says, we need to get back to patriarchy so we can rebuild all that has fallen in our times and build anew. Without the groundwork of patriarchy, no other efforts at renewal and progress will succeed. Redemptive distortion, and with all this Adamic symbolism, they imply, they don't actually teach this, but they imply, and through unstated assumption and things, that Jesus did not make our relationship with the first Adam obsolete, which certainly all I get from Adam is sin and death. I don't know what they're getting from Adam. But Jesus is seen as some kind of catalyst that works them back towards the fall. And it's a seeking to participate in sanctification through works. So they're really enamored with Eden and Adam.
How does that practically work itself out, like this working back towards being like Adam?
All this symbolism is Adamic. The primary relationships are viewed through Adam and Eve versus Christ. It's a focus on the legalism of the Old Testament and just really participation in sanctification. Some of these books are so strange you just absolutely have to read them. The Federal Vision book, published by Steve Wilkins, is just, I just couldn't believe that got by anybody that was a Christian. There's just some very strange things in there. It's specific, like even that Adam's sin was not willful disobedience, but actually immaturity, that God would have invited him to partake of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's a Mormonism concept.
But it's also, when you say it also falls into Pelagian.
Oh, yeah. This is what I find so strange, because such a large number of people within the movement, he asked if this is actually a Pelagian concept. So many people in the movement staunchly claim to be Reformed. And I mean, that's why I gravitated towards a Reformed doctrine, because I grew up in the Word of Faith movement, and God was the cosmic bellhop, and this brought a lot of balance to my own concepts of God. And I just, providence, this is wonderful.
Oh, no.
And they're working out their own salvation without fear and trembling, or I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. Women, this is interesting. Woman is redefined as the derivative or the indirect image of God. She is ontologically subordinate or of lesser essence than man, because she was taken from Adam's substance. And if you read in those excerpts that I've given you, Palmer basically says, man gets married and he reabsorbs his rib. His language is almost exactly like that. And that's why I say we don't need the Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood to tell us this stuff. It was written in 1876. And I don't know where he cribbed his stuff from. It's disturbing. So women are